This is Business Talk, and I'm Norman Liss. This program is dedicated to helping people do business better. One of the subjects that's so important to people is how to use the telephone effectively. We talk about it in terms of our own business, and we talk about it as being the recipient of telephone calls, sometimes unwanted. Fortunately, we have as our guest today Gail Goodman, who is a photo technique trainer, and we're going to talk about telephone techniques. And Gail, I'm so glad that you can be here in person, not on the telephone. And so let's talk about the telephone. What's the most important thing for someone to know in using a telephone in business?
I think the most important thing that business people need to know is that they have to have some level of skill in order to have confidence. A lot of times when people use the phone, their voices give away the fact that there's a lack of confidence, that there's nervousness, or they don't exactly know what they're going to say. And so having been trained helps people to have that confidence. Okay,
you say skill and train. I mean, everybody knows how to use a telephone.
Sure.
It's like everybody knows how to walk. Everybody knows how to use the telephone.
Right.
But are you saying that people do not use the telephone because they don't know certain techniques?
Well, people use the telephone because they have to, because that's the way American business works. But I think that there's a big difference. For example, you know how to walk and I know how to walk, but if we wanted a power walk in order to lose weight, we would go to a special trainer and say, look, I know how to get from here to there, but how do I lose weight doing this?
Okay,
that's
telephone
the way,
trainer.
Right.
How do I power telephone? What are the basics?
The basics are being prepared, knowing how to focus on what your task is. What is the purpose of this phone call? All of us know how to talk, but most of us use the phone in a social, quote-unquote, gabby kind of way. And when you're calling for business, you can't do that. Yes, you may want to ask somebody how they are if you know them and chat with them a little bit about the family, but then you always have to go back to the purpose of the call. Most people, when they pick up the phone, don't realize what is my end result, what's my target state, and how am I going to get to that?
There's a lot of criticism, of course, about the people who call you at all hours and try to sell you something, and I'm sure that it's a problem that you face, and maybe it's one of the reasons that people need you. But so many times when someone is following a form, you can tell that they're reading to you from a script. Is that what you're talking about, having something prepared that people can use?
Yes, but I use a very different analogy when I talk about scripts. When you pay $65 or $70 to go to Broadway and you see a play, there's no thought that goes through your head such as this person is using a script. Now, you know when you go see something like Lost in Yonkers that Neil Simon is the playwright, but at the moment that you're sitting there, those actors and actresses are so spontaneous in the way that they perform that you don't perceive the script. That is what somebody should be able to do who's truly trained in a professional.
Okay, so how do you avoid sounding like you're reading?
The same way they do on Broadway. You practice and practice and practice, and you watch your intonation. If you don't have somebody to coach you, which is one of the things that I do for my trainees, you have to tape yourself, which is a highly painful thing to do, but you need to do it anyway.
That's for an individual to do. But
yes.
What if you're having people who are calling on your behalf, and you've given them a script, and these people, do you spend the time in rehearsing them and having them listen to themselves on tape recorder?
Are you talking about, for example, hiring an outside telemarketing firm that does work for you?
Employees that work for you.
Well, if it's your own employees, yes. The most important thing to do is to sit and coach them and make sure that the way they come across is exactly the way your company image the way you want your company image to sound. See, the thing that we get involved in a lot in this country is visual things. How does my business card look? How do my clothes look? What is my haircut? You know, the look of things is very critical because we're a very big television watching country. However, how something sounds is what counts over the phone, and most people don't pay enough attention to the hearing world, and how they sound and come across is critical. One of the things I teach people that I train is, as long as you're enthusiastic, you can totally mess up, and what you want is probably going to happen anyway. People don't approach the phone with this kind of up, happy, smiling, enthusiastic sound to their voice, and that's usually what kills the appointment if they're trying to get an appointment anyway.
So rule number one is enthusiasm?
Sure. More than preparation. You have to love what you're doing, want to be speaking to the people you're calling, even if they're strangers, and approach them as if you expect them to treat you nicely, because most people are nice.
But there's a lot of rejection.
See, I don't call it rejection.
Okay, what do you
I
call it?
reframe a lot of these concepts that are
So what do you call
classic.
it?
I don't call it rejection. I let people know that there are basically three possibilities. Think of a stoplight. There's a red light, there's a green light, and in the middle is this yellow light. Yellow is always caution. You don't exactly know whether you should brake or go forward. In fact, depending on the way you drive, it's going to probably determine that. But when somebody puts up a red light and they say, I'm not interested, and they hang up the phone on you, I don't see that as rejection. I just see that as, at that moment in time, when you've called that person, they need to put up a red light for some reason. You'll probably never know what it is. It's not personal. The problem with the phone, which in some ways is an asset, but let's look at it as a problem, is when I choose to call you to offer my services, I am catching you at that moment in your life, at that moment in time. And I have to do the best I can with the feelings you have at that moment. Now, you may be having something going on at work I have no information about. And you can't listen to me because the factory is down, your best secretary is out, the phones are ringing off the hook, and you had an emergency at home. And I come innocently into that with my offer to get together with you or show you something. And when you say, I'm not interested, click, in an angry tone of voice, that has nothing to do with me.
But, however, when I get a telephone call and it's something I'm not interested in, and I say, I think you're wasting your time, so really you shouldn't be talking to me, the person most of the time will persist and pursue it behind. I don't want to hang up, but they are forcing me to hang up because they refuse to let go. Now, is that a good technique from the selling viewpoint?
That's a very controversial part of training, because even people who train others and are in a position like mine, whether they're sales managers and they're responsible to train people or they're professionals like myself, there's a controversy over how many times do you persist. My feeling, very, very strongly, that in 1994, dealing with the current climate toward the telephone and the fact that most people are telemarketed to death, most people do not run to catch the phone, like you and I might have when we were kids. People use answering machines. They're very leery of the phone. Our whole relationship with it is different. My feeling is when somebody says no once, you can try to persist, but then when they say twice, you let go. And then I teach my trainees, no matter what field they're in, after 2 times, you hang up. It's over after 2 no's, whatever format they take. So that's my rule.
You say that we're telemarketed to death, and as a result, certain things have to be done. How do you overcome the fact that the minute that you hear that it's a business call, the recipient puts up a barrier? How do you overcome that?
Well, the most important thing is to have a compelling reason to make them listen to you. And again, I think that that's part of good scripting. One of the things that I train people to understand is that as soon as you put the phone to this ear, all your brains are spilling out of this ear. Do not expect to become brilliant and suddenly become a fabulous orator over the phone. You need to plan in advance, because you will come up with the best possible combination of words when you're sitting and thinking about it. Once the phone is next to your ear, you're under pressure too. So if I want to offer you something over the phone, the first thing I need to do after I identify myself is to give you a compelling reason to continue to listen to me, and then have the time to give you 2 or 3 more sentences about what it is that I'm offering you. And telemarketing varies depending on
Give me a couple of for instances. How do you reach me as the recipient and give me a compelling reason to listen to you?
Let's use this as an example. you are the host of a cable show that brings business people in, and let's say I'm a PR firm, and I have a client that I want you to put on your show because I think he needs the exposure. If I were to call you up, I would say, hello, Mr. Liss, this is Gail Goodman from Goodman Public Relations Incorporated.
And I'll hang up.
Maybe you would, in which case there's nothing I can do about it. But if you were to let me go through my introduction, my next line would have to be something like, I understand that you have dynamic business people on your cable show, and I've come across an extremely fascinating human being. At that point, if you haven't hung up on me, I would give you one or two more sentences about why you and I should get together or why I should send you more information on this person so that you would consider them for your show. That line that you say after your initial introduction, hello, your name, and your company, which in many states is becoming a law. You must identify your name and your company in the first 10 seconds.
You're mentioning law.
Yeah.
There are some legal considerations now that are happening.
Absolutely.
And what's happening and what's the future look like?
Depends on what side of the fence you're sitting on, how the future looks. They could say it looks very bleak if you're trying to cold call hundreds and thousands of people a day. And I would say that as a homeowner and a consumer, you probably think it's a great idea. There's a lot of fraud over the phone. That's a big problem. Many of these laws are created to prevent fraud to the consumer. Now, of course, the small number of people that commit fraud that cause the laws that inhibit and restrict and constrict the work of obviously a lot of very honest people. But what is happening is that the time of day that you're allowed to call, when you're allowed to call, like within 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., that's a law in most states. The fact that if it is a cold call, i.e. an unsolicited call, you must identify yourself and your corporation and who you represent within the first 10 seconds. I know that's a law in California. And there's a variety of things that, in general, are coming down the pike, and it's a state-by-state thing, which makes it totally confusing.
You feel that cold calling to consumers is going to be outlawed?
I believe that by the year 2000, cold calling, if it isn't going to be outlawed, is going to be so impossible that nobody is going to have the resources to do it, and it will peter itself out. At current levels, I work a lot in the insurance industry, and I have trained a lot of the agents to understand they must come up with other marketing strategies because cold calling is becoming so impossible. They need to spend more than 50% of their week on the phone to create just 10 appointments a week.
There is controversy over whether cold calling works. Does it work?
Sure. Of course it worked. If it didn't work, everybody would naturally stop doing it. It would fade out on its own. Cold calling does work, absolutely.
What's the purpose of telemarketing? Is it to close, to open, to make appointments? You've covered all of these subjects. What's the purpose in doing telephone selling? It
depends. This is, again, when you get on the phone, what's your target state? If I'm working for the United Way, and I've done volunteer work to train their telemarketers, the United Way is calling to get money. That is their target state. So fundraising is a whole category in the field of telephoning. The second field would be what I call teleselling, where the target state is to contact a customer and to actually sell them a product or service via the phone, where there's no other interaction. And the third area of expertise, where a bulk of my business is working with direct salespeople who use the phone merely as a way to set an appointment, and then there is a face-to-face interaction that follows. Every professional in your life, and in most people's lives, use the phone. Your dentist confirms appointments, you call him for an appointment. Your lawyer probably confirms. You have to call a doctor to get an appointment. So that area of telemarketing as a field is where most of the work that I do is. I don't do a lot of time with fundraising.
I want to get into another aspect of this,
Sure.
but first I want to tell my viewers that we're discussing today telephone techniques, and my guest today is Gail Goodman. Let's look at it from the other side. Okay. What about telephone calls that come into a business? How you answer your telephone, how you treat people who are calling you. There are a lot of things I have said before, and I'll say it again now. I consider the telephone to be the first line of offense. And in many cases, it's very offensive for a lot of reasons. How do people avoid being offensive on the telephone? And I'll be negative, but why don't you start?
Most of the time, number one, most people don't answer the phone properly, even in their corporations. There was an interesting article that I read in Telemarketing Magazine that in this day and age, the shorter the greeting on the behalf of the corporation, the better it is. In fact, saying, may I help you or may I direct your call is totally unnecessary because it's known and implied. And the actual correct way to answer your own corporate phone is to state the name of the company and then say, this is, and your own personal name, so that the person who is calling in can identify who you are and then speak to you like a person. That immediately creates rapport on the behalf of your corporation.
Now, so many times you'll call a company and the person who answers the phone will say, "Private problem."
Right.
You have no idea what they're saying. You don't even know if you're in the right place.
That's correct.
Maybe they've been answering too many telephones.
That is probably true. And it's up to somebody in that corporation to have people calling in on an unknown basis and checking on how these people are handling the phone. They do get tired. It's very tiring to answer a phone if you're the receptionist, even with headsets and all kinds of computerized ways of transferring calls. And you have to train them to learn not to do that over time.
How do you feel about personally answering the phone? And I'm interested in the point that you made for the person who's answering the phone to give his or her name immediately. So many phones are being answered today by answering systems.
Yes.
You don't even talk to anybody. You just get a computer voice which says push a button and transfer over and push 16 buttons before you arrive at the place you want. How do you feel about that? Do you think that people are accepting that?
Well, I'll tell you from my point of view, because I don't know how other people feel, but I think voicemail is the best thing that happened to this country.
Why?
Because it makes it easier for me to get to the party that I want to get to. And the best part of voicemail is that when you need to leave a message, that tape can handle accepting your voice quicker than any human being can write it down. So when you're calling a lot of people who aren't at their desks, which is the way I prospect, because I'm often calling agency managers, they're never at their desks. I play phone tag many, many times back and forth. I can get through many, many more phone calls because I get put through to their voicemail. I can leave long-winded messages if it's a complicated situation, or I can just say, it's Gail Goodman, please call me back. And there's no way a human being can write my phone number that quickly.
But Gail, that's in contrast to what you said. If someone who's answering the corporate phone answers the name of the company and it says, this is John, may I help you? Or
Right.
this is John.
This is John. Yeah.
This is John. So there's a personal feeling. It's not just a voice that's stuck in there. And you've given a name to that person, but you say you prefer not to have a person. They seem to be in conflict with each other.
I think that for people who want to get through quickly, you know the extension, you want to get through to the person you want to talk to, that's great. Every voicemail system, you press 0, you get a person. So for those, see, now there's more choice. For those, it's kind of like cable TV. For those who want the personal touch, you press 0 in any voicemail system, you're going to get that receptionist who you can talk to and ask questions of. For those of us who need to scurry through and just leave a quick message, then you have the luxury of technology taking care of you.
What's your feeling about the technique when a line is busy and they put you on hold and play a local radio station, which may not be your type of music, or commercials?
There's a lot of controversy over what should be on the machine when somebody is on hold in a system that's lining up the calls as they come in, because technology allows 25 or more calls to be banked up until they can get passed through the system, and that can be a long period of time if you're on hold. Personally, I think that silence is dangerous because then you don't know if you've gotten connected. I like the fact that with a speakerphone, I can put that voicemail or that music or whatever they decide to make me listen to, often it's a commercial about the company, on a speaker, and I can continue to do my work while I'm waiting. So the technology that allows them to do that is the same technology that allows me to be hands-free, just waiting for them to pick up the phone. None of us is a slave now to that wire that connects us to that box. We can, one, we have mobile phones, and two, we have speakerphones.
Yes. Before we go too far, if anyone wants more information on telephone techniques, I'd like to have you give a number that people could call to reach you and maybe get some more information. Could we give that number now?
Sure. They can call me in the 914 area code at 921-2261.
And we'll give you a chance to repeat that later, and then we'll put it on the closing slide. Let's go back to business people using the telephone effectively. When you're trying to reach someone in a business situation, now the chances are you're going to get someone taking a message, or you're going to get voicemail, which could be an answering machine or a more sophisticated system. And you mentioned playing telephone tag.
Yes.
Isn't that frustrating? How do you avoid the telephone call that is not returned? What do you do? How long do you wait before you call again? Is it a game of one-upmanship and one-downmanship?
Sometimes it is. Depends on the relationship between the caller and the person who they're pursuing. But one of the things that's good about voicemail is that you can always leave a message that says, I've called you several times and clearly I don't know what your schedule is. Perhaps it's best if I leave my schedule for you. And you may have even heard people's voice messages saying, leave me the best times to reach you, because they will try to catch you in this telephone tag game. And I suggest that people leave specific times. How many times do you call somebody back? That's a really hard question to answer, because I've called somebody back as much as 27 times, knowing that they were going to have to become my client. And I've also stopped calling people after the second time. I think you learn a lot from any interaction you have with somebody. There is a tone of voice that implies you're welcome to call again. There's a tone of voice that says, look, I know you caught me, but I'm really not interested in anything you have to say. The reason a lot of people pursue quote-unquote uninterested prospects is because they don't have enough prospects. Mm-hmm. And then you chase them.
You are a very strong advocate for voicemail and the message, the answering machine message. You said earlier that when a person answers the phone, it should be very short, the name of the corporation and the name of the person who's answering the phone. There are messages that you get on voicemail which go on and on and on and on.
Yes.
And there are some which say, this is Norman Liss, this is my number, please leave a message after the beep. And there are some people who put a different message on every time they go out.
Right.
What's best?
You're having your own message on your answering machine, you're saying. Well, the first thing I tell people is never have music in the background, even if you're a music company, because unless it's properly edited and the amount of volume is absolutely perfect, it's usually harder to hear the person who's saying, this is Gail Goodman, please leave me a message. When you have an unending tape, such as I do, you want people to leave detailed messages if they need to, or to be brief if possible. My problem is sometimes I'm calling from a remote location and I have these very long-winded stories on my machine. When it's personal friends doing that, I have cut them out from doing that. And I say, look, I'm paying to pick up that message.
I wasn't talking so much about the message that you leave, but the message that says...
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah.
I'm leading up to that. When you leave your message, you can let people know if you only want a brief message, even if your machine could take a 2-minute message. And I have a friend whose machine says that. Please leave a 30-second or less message, and I'll get back to you. So she's very clear on that. I, on the other hand, sometimes have interactions that are complicated because of scheduling and training things, and I say, please leave me as long a message as you need to. So you have to invite people to do what you want if you want to control it.
Do you believe in changing the message?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Yes, I do. I think that people get tired of hearing it.
So leave a message would say, I've just gone down to the post office and I'll be back in 10 minutes, so
No,
call
that's
me after
too
3.
frequently. I think changing your message, I'd say every couple of weeks or so. I've left funny messages and I've had people call me and say, I don't like when you do that. It sounds unprofessional. I've had other people start laughing into my machine and say, that's so clever. So you're not going to please everybody all of the time. You shouldn't try to, that's for sure. But one of the things that I've left on my machine is, remember, this is a telemarketing training company. Please speak in your best phone voice because I'm going to grade you.
So
now, some people think that's funny.
You're using it for marketing purposes, so you're using the message as a sales message.
Right.
And, of course, there are people who say, while you're waiting, and they give you a whole sales pitch. You're stuck with a commercial.
I just called somebody. I was told to call her. I didn't know what I was going to get on the phone, and I got a very long sales message about all of her materials, her trainings, or this or that.
You don't think that is correct?
I was thinking it was real clever of her. I wasn't pleased because my whole purpose for calling was a different reason. But I thought it was very clever on her part.
So you think it is effective to do that?
Anybody who wanted her products, it was real clear how to get them.
On the other hand, you didn't resent having to sit through that long message before you could leave yours?
No, because it was the first time I called her, but if she was one of my best friends and I had to use that phone to call her frequently, I would probably want to know if there was a code I could use to bypass the message. See, that's another thing that technology has allowed us to do, which I also like. There are many voicemails where in the beginning they say, if you want to skip this message at any point, press, and then there's a code. And I have friends who have voicemail like that, and I always know to press and get past their long message, and then I can go to the part where I get to leave my message.
Let's go back to using the telephone more effectively.
Sure.
Could we give a series of rules, what to do, be personable? I know you've said that. How about some other things that we can tell people?
Sure.
Or talking to others on the telephone for business purposes?
Number one, know exactly why you're making the call. Number two, prepare what it is you want to say. Give yourself a guide. If you don't want to write out a script in full sentences, at least write short phrases in the correct order so that as you link them, you'll sound natural, but at least you'll get the important points across. Smile as you speak. The one piece of body language that you can see, quote unquote, or hear over the phone is smiling. Number two, feel enthusiastic. If you're not feeling enthusiastic, maybe this isn't the best time to make the phone call, or do something so you feel better. Don't approach anybody with a bored tone of voice. And interestingly enough, most people don't enunciate properly over the phone. I leave a message on my machine because I've had this problem, as everybody has. I can't pick up the message because I can't get the phone call number. What's the number? What's the number? Speak slowly and clearly. Most of us, especially in New York, speak too quickly. I know I'm a very fast speaker, and I have to deliberately slow down when I'm doing my messages and when I'm leaving a message for somebody. Know that when somebody puts up a brick wall once, you can chip at it. But then if they say the same exact thing twice, my rule is 2 and go. Because then, if you don't irritate the person, you have an opportunity to call them back at another time. Once you've become an irritant, they will remember you forever, and they'll remember you negatively. So the most important thing is not to push so far that somebody doesn't invite you back in again ever. And also, you should also respect the fact that people have a right to not let you in.
We want to give your telephone number once again.
Okay. My number is 921-2261.
And that's in the 914 area.
Yes, it is.
The use of the telephone, is that a way to make a sale, or is it just one step in the process?
If you do direct sales in your corporation, and you have a sales crew that get in their cars or go on some vehicle of transportation out to see the prospects, then the phone is an appointment-setting vehicle. And it's very important that people be trained not to sell over the phone, because the sales environment is the face-to-face. The other kind of company has to know that the phone is their selling medium, and their people need to be trained a little differently. The entire sales presentation and the close and the conditions of the sale, how do you get paid, etc., all have to be part of the phone conversation.
And part of this conversation is the fact that we've run out of time.
Okay.
So I thank you very much for coming and telling us how to use the telephone properly.
Thank you.
We have been discussing today the subject of telephone techniques, and my guest is Gail Goodman. Use your telephone wisely, and it will be good to you. The name of this program is Business Talk, and I'm Norman Liss. And until next time at this time, good luck.